My name is Darian Lowe, 48 years old, senior systems architect at Navison Systems. For nearly 2 decades, I built the bones of that company invisible, efficient, and silent. I never raised my voice in meetings. I never argued when credit slipped away. But tonight, the silence finally ended. The ballroom of the Seattle Sheraton glowed gold under 1,000 lights. Through the glass doors, I could see my work, my data model, my design displayed on the projector screen under another man's name. Innovation of the Year Quantum Sync. The room burst into applause. I stood outside, clutching my invitation, unreadable to the doorman who blocked my way. Then Clive Hartwell, my boss, appeared with his practiced smirk and a glass of champagne. "Beautiful dress," he said, his voice dripping with that lazy condescension he saved for women who made him nervous. "But you don't belong here." He gestured to security. "Walk her out." The guard's hand touched my sleeve. My body stayed still, but something inside me turned sharp. My eyes met Clive's calm, steady, deliberate. "Good luck getting through tonight," I said, just loud enough for him to hear. Outside, the drizzle had thickened. Seattle's skyline shimmered like fractured glass. I walked to the edge of the plaza, opened my laptop, and connected to the guest Wi-Fi, the same network I'd once configured years ago. The cursor blinked over the final command, the email queued and waiting. My pulse slowed to a measured rhythm. Then I pressed send. 15 minutes later, the storm began not in the sky, but behind the ballroom's glass walls. Notifications flared. A man dropped his phone. A woman gasped. 5 contracts worth $500 million in total annual revenue were gone. Canceled, redirected, vanished, inside. Someone shouted for Clive. The projector flickered. The music stuttered to silence. And for the first time in years, everyone finally looked toward me, though none of them could see me through the glass. I closed my laptop, the screen still glowing faintly against the rain, calm, precise, inevitable. Then I walked away, leaving the night and them to unravel. When I first joined Navison Systems, the office still smelled of burned coffee and panic. The company had barely survived its last quarter. I was 40 and too old, they said, to start over in tech. But numbers never cared about age, and logic never lied. Within 6 months, my forecasting model cut waste across 3 regions. The CEO called it a miracle of timing. I called it math done right. Clive was different than cordial, curious, always stopping by my desk with that disarming charm. "You've got a brain built for balance sheets," he'd say, tapping my screen. "Keep at it. We'll make a name for you." I believed him. I worked weekends, holidays, the night of my niece's graduation. My sister called to ask if I'd ever sleep again. I told her this was what rebuilding looked like. The first award season came during Navison's turnaround year. Clive called me into his office, grinning. "You're nominated," he said, sliding a printed agenda across his desk. "Data Innovation of the Year. You earned this one." I stared at that single line, my name spelled correctly for once, and felt something catch in my throat. I bought a dress. I rehearsed a 2-line thank you, just in case. The night arrived, bright and loud. Clive opened the presentation. "Our next honoree," he said, "has transformed how we forecast every shipment and metric." I waited for my name. Instead, the screen flashed, presented by Clive Hartwell, head of operations. The applause was instant. People stood, cheering for the man who had merely signed the approval form. I sat frozen, the sound pulsing in my ears. After the ceremony, I found him near the buffet. "You said," he interrupted, smiling. "Teamwork. Darian. It's all about optics. You'll understand." I did understand. That was the night I learned how easily brilliance could be repackaged, how quietly a woman could disappear in her own work. I went home, deleted my thank you speech, and wrote a new kind of promise to myself, one that didn't need applause to be real. I still remember the smell of burnt projector dust the morning it happened. The quarterly review had been moved to the main boardroom glass walls, 12 executives, and a fresh pot of coffee none of them would touch. I sat in the back row, the quiet observer I'd trained myself to be. When Jordan Vale walked in, the room actually brightened. 26. Loud. Too confident for someone who had been there barely 2 months. He plugged in his laptop, flashed a nervous smile, and said, "I'd like to present our new logistics optimization suite, Quantum Sync." My throat went dry. The title slide appeared, and I saw it instantly: my structure, my equations, my color-coded logic tree. Even the formatting of the error trace tables was identical. He spoke through my framework like it was his own discovery, each word polished by rehearsals I hadn't been invited to. Clive sat beside him, nodding proudly. "This is the kind of initiative we've been waiting for," he said. "Young talent, forward-thinking." I couldn't move. My hands were cold, clasped together under the table. When Jordan reached the final page, the predictive dashboard I'd built on my weekends, I felt something inside me fracture cleanly, like glass. After the presentation, Clive caught my eye in the hallway. "Good work on the back-end support," he said. We all rise together. I wanted to ask who exactly we was, but my voice didn't make it past my teeth. That night, I stayed long after the office lights dimmed. I opened every version of my model, compared the timestamps, the code, the metadata. Each file carried my initials, buried in the notes proof no intern could erase. By midnight, I had everything: archived drafts, emails, revision logs. I labeled the encrypted drive Vault 9. When I pulled the flash drive from the port, I realized my hands had stopped shaking. They had taken my work. But for the first time in 18 years, I had finally taken something back. The next morning, I printed every email thread linked to Quantum Sync headers, timestamps, attachments. My desk looked like an evidence board, and I was the only detective who cared. When I carried the stack to HR, the woman behind the glass wall barely looked up from her screen. Her name was Eleni, always polite, always detached. "I'm reporting an attribution violation," I said, setting the files on her desk. She sighed as if I had interrupted something more important. "Did you build these tools during your standard hours?" "Yes," I said slowly. "And also on my own time." She adjusted her glasses. "Then technically, they belong to the company. Attribution is at management's discretion." The word discretion hung between us like a curtain. She closed the folder and smiled the way people do when they've already forgotten you. "If it's any comfort. Everyone knows you do great work." "It isn't," I said, and left. That night, I didn't sleep. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator louder than my breathing. Line by line, I rewrote the entire system cleaner code, new architecture, built from the ground up on my own machine, using none of their tools. I called this version Atlas, a structure strong enough to hold everything they had stolen. By the end of the week, I had learned more about intellectual property than I ever cared to. A pro bono attorney named Raphael Dent met me at a coffee shop near Pike Street. He wore a suit too big for his frame and spoke like every word came with a footnote. "You're right to document everything," he said. "Keep digital signatures, version logs, any independent backups. Don't confront them yet. I don't plan to." When he left, I stayed behind, stirring cold coffee, watching rain slide down the window. I didn't know what I was building toward, only that every keystroke was a small defiance, a note of quiet proof. One day, they would need my code again, and this time they would have to come to me to find it. It started with one message, a short note sent to an old contact list. "Still working on systems optimization." Only one reply came that night from Maribel Kess, once a lead product engineer, now teaching part-time coding classes after her project was mysteriously absorbed by management. We met at a small cafe near Pike Place. The windows fogged from the rain, and our laptops glowed between us like secret lanterns. "They said my prototype wasn't scalable," Maribel murmured, scrolling through her old files. 3 months later, Clive presented it with a new logo. I nodded. They did the same with my forecasting model. She looked up then, eyes tired but alert. So what now? We rebuild, I said, without them this time. Word spread slowly, quietly. One introduction led to another. Theo Langdon, a strategist who had lost his position after his retention plan was credited to a vice president, joined us next. Then Delia Reyes, a compliance officer dismissed after uncovering state contract overcharges. We never met in large groups, never more than 3 at a time. Sometimes a diner booth, sometimes a rented workspace in Sodo with flickering fluorescent lights. We spoke in fragments datasets, risk logs, algorithms once buried under other people's names. Why us, Theo asked one night, rubbing his temples. We could all just walk away. Because we built the spine. I said, they only dressed it up. Piece by piece. We reconstructed everything. Maribel's automation modules, Theo's analytic dashboards, Delia's audit filters all stitched together with my architecture. We called it Atlas Vault. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about ownership, about seeing our work exist without permission. When the last line of code compiled without error, the silence in that warehouse felt heavier than applause. Theo grinned for the first time in months. So what now? He asked. I closed the terminal and said, now we wait for them to notice what's missing. The first call came from Harrow Logistics, one of Navison's oldest clients. I still remembered their original server passwords, back from the days when I stayed up until dawn fixing their inventory errors. The new manager, Ellen Ruiz, picked up after 3 rings. Darian, I didn't expect to hear from you. I'm not with Navison anymore, I said, but I think you'll want to see something. We met the next morning in a small co-working space near the waterfront. I opened my laptop, loaded Atlas Vault, and handed her control of the dashboard. Run your last quarter's data, I said. She frowned, typed a few commands, and froze as the projections updated instantly, mapping delays and costs before she could blink. This is running live every 5 seconds, I said. No black boxes. Full traceability. She leaned back, whispering, Navison's system takes 12 hours for the same result. I didn't answer. The silence filled itself. By noon, she asked. What do you need from us? Nothing binding, I said. Just a letter of intent to explore partnership. You'll keep your options open. I'll keep your data safe. She signed on the spot. 4 more followed Trenton Freight, Alpha Marks, Lincor Distributors, Briar Bay Foods. No promises, only signatures and dates. Each document stated that, if Atlas Vault launched commercially, they would transition to a pilot program. Theo drafted the templates, Delia reviewed compliance language, and Maribel secured encrypted backups. We knew the weight of those 5 letters. They weren't contracts, but they were visible public enough to make Navison's investors nervous if they ever leaked. When I told the team the timing, Maribel looked up from her screen. The night of the awards. You're serious. They built their celebration on what they stole, I said. We'll build our beginning on the same night. Theo chuckled softly. Poetic symmetry. We spent the next 2 weeks refining code and version locking every file. On the final test run, the platform executed flawlessly faster, cleaner, undeniable. I shut the laptop and looked around the dim workspace. This is it, I said. 5 letters, 1 night. No one spoke, but every face held the same quiet certainty the first domino was already leaning. The lobby of the Grand Sheraton felt colder this year, even under the chandeliers. I arrived early, the same slate gray dress, the same badge clipped neatly to my lapel. My name was printed on it this time, proof that they'd learned how to spell it, not how to value it. Ms. Lowe, the woman at the check-in table, smiled. Then she glanced at her screen, and the smile faltered. I'm sorry, your credentials have been changed. I repeated, the word tasted familiar, before I could ask. Clive Hartwell appeared behind her, bow tie crooked, confidence polished. Beautiful dress, he said again, just like last year. But you don't belong here. I met his gaze. History has a short memory. Clive. He smirked. Security. 2 guards moved closer. One reached for my elbow, polite but firm. I stepped back and lifted my bag from the table. "No need," I said. I remember the way out. Outside. Seattle's rain dripped steady against the awning. I found a small corner near the glass doors, set my bag down, and opened the laptop. The guest Wi-Fi connected instantly the same network I had built years ago when the company was still running on borrowed code. The cursor blinked over the draft email, 5 client notices, 5 letters of intent, 5 termination triggers waiting for release. Each message copied the legal team, the compliance branch, and the press, all time-stamped, all verified. I inhaled once, then pressed send. Inside, the ballroom shimmered under golden light, through the glass. I saw the host pause mid-sentence. The first phone lit up, then another, then a dozen. Heads turned, whispers spread. Clive's smile faltered. Jordan Vale, holding his award, froze under the spotlight. Through the reflection, I saw myself calm, still, almost serene as chaos began to ripple behind the glass. I closed the laptop softly, like finishing a prayer. Then I turned and walked away, the sound of rain and distant voices blending into something quiet, almost peaceful. By the time I reached my car, my phone was already vibrating like a living thing. I let it hum in my bag as I drove through the rain. The windshield blurred the city into streaks of gold and gray. When I finally looked, there were 12 missed calls, 5 from unknown numbers, 3 from HR, and 4 from Clive. I parked under the awning of my building, the engine still running. The phone rang again. I answered. "Darien." Clive's voice was breathless. All the arrogance stripped away. "Whatever you've done, we can fix this. Stop the transfers. We'll renegotiate." I kept my tone level. They weren't transfers, Clive. They were choices. "You're jeopardizing everything you built." "I built it. You jeopardized it." He said my name again, softer this time, but I hung up. Minutes later, Theo called from the Atlas workspace. "One of the clients is wavering," he said. "Briar Bay. Their legal team's getting cold feet. If they pull back, the others might follow." "Patch me through," I said. A man's voice came on the line, Briar Bay's operations head, Ms. Lowe. "This situation is volatile. We're being threatened with litigation for breach." "You're not breaching," I said. "Your letter of intent only states intent. If Navison's counsel wants to intimidate you, let them put it in writing. I'll forward our compliance clauses within the hour." He hesitated. "And if this collapses, then you'll still have a cleaner system and a clear conscience, but it won't collapse." After he hung up, I opened my laptop again. The clock read 2:30 in the morning. I rewrote the legal framework line by line, making sure every signature, every clause, every timestamp aligned with federal compliance language. At dawn, my inbox chimed 5 confirmations, including Briar Bay's, all final. Theo texted one word secured. I exhaled, the kind of breath that feels years overdue. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the glass towers across the street glowed faintly in the new light. For the first time in a long time, the silence around me didn't feel empty. It felt earned. 3 days after the storm, I was back at our new workspace, a converted freight hub overlooking the harbor. The smell of paint still lingered. Theo was setting up routers, Maribel fine-tuning code. The air buzzed with quiet purpose. That's when the glass door opened and Clive Hartwell walked in. No announcement, no call ahead, just his polished shoes clicking against the concrete floor. Theo looked up, startled. I nodded for him to keep working. Clive's suit was immaculate, but his eyes looked like someone had drained the certainty out of them. "Impressive setup," he said, scanning the rows of monitors. "You built all this, fast." I had time. I said. He walked closer, lowering his voice. "I'm here off the record. The board wants resolution. We're prepared to offer full reinstatement director level, your own division, stock options, the works." I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. An hour ago, I wasn't worth a seat. Now you want to buy the table. Clive smiled faintly. the way men do when they think charm can erase history. It was a misunderstanding, Darian. Things moved too quickly. Optics, I cut him off. You called security on me. He hesitated. That was protocol. It was humiliation. For the first time, he looked uncertain. We can fix this. You and I, we built that company together. No, I said quietly. I built it. You put your name on it. He straightened, something brittle returning to his tone. Be careful. Darian. Success fades faster than outrage. Then you'd better move quickly. I said, yours is fading fast. He stared at me for a long moment, the kind of silence that used to make me shrink. This time, it didn't move me at all. Finally, he extended his hand. I hope you reconsider. I already did, I said, without touching him. He left without another word. The door shut behind him, and the echo felt final, like the end of a language I no longer needed to speak. 3 months later, Atlas Vault had already outgrown our small workspace. 19 clients, 3 new engineers, investors calling instead of avoiding us. The noise of progress replaced the silence I used to work in, and for the first time in years, it felt like the right kind of noise. When the invitation arrived from the Pacific Supply Chain Summit, I read it twice. The theme was Emerging Systems of Tomorrow. The keynote slot had been reserved for Clive's name. Once upon a time, now, it bore mine. The morning of the summit. I stood backstage with a headset mic clipped to my collar. Through the curtain, I could see faces I recognized, people who once turned away when I spoke. Their eyes were on the stage now, waiting. The coordinator whispered, "Ready when you are, Ms. Lowe." I walked out to the podium. The lights were warm, the silence complete. My heart didn't race, it simply steadied, like it had been waiting for this moment all along. They told me to wait outside. I began, so I built the door. No one moved, no scattered coughs, no shifting chairs, just stillness. Then, a single clap broke it, followed by another, and then the room rose to its feet. The applause didn't sound like approval. It sounded like recognition. Afterward, reporters crowded the edge of the stage. One asked if I had anything to say to my former employer. I smiled faintly. I already did. I said it with my work. Outside, the Seattle sky had turned to amber over the bay. Theo handed me a cup of coffee, still laughing about a client request that came mid-presentation. Maribel was on the phone, scheduling demos. Delia was rewriting a compliance clause, humming under her breath. I stepped out into the crisp air and watched the harbor lights shimmer across the water. For the first time, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I had built the stage myself, and this time, I wasn't giving the microphone back.